Hello YouTubers, you're on a new episode of The Final Cut, and today we're going to be going over Dracula's Daughter from 1936. Dracula's Daughter stars Gloria Holden as Countess Mara Zaleska, Otto Kruger as Jeffrey Garth, Margaret Churchill as Janet, Edward Van Sloan as Professor Von Helsing, and Irving Pischel as Sandor. It is directed by Lambert Hillier. Professor Van Helsing is in danger of prosecution for the murder of Dracula until a hypnotic woman steals the Count's body and cremates it. Bloodless corpses start appearing in London again, and Hungarian Countess Mara Zaleska seeks the aid of Jeffrey Garth, psychiatrist, in freeing herself of a mysterious evil influence. So yeah, that's the cast and crew of Dracula's Daughter, and a brief plot summary. Yeah, this is a sequel to the Bela Lugosi film from 1931, and originally it was going to have Bela Lugosi star in it with someone else. Eventually, they just asked too much money and they did not pay Bela Lugosi to come back, but he was paid for using his likeness in a wax dummy at the beginning of the film. Also, you ran into some copyright issues for the story. It was originally going to be based on the short story Dracula's Guest, but that didn't go through. And this was also the last horror film production produced by Carl Laemmle. But Dracula's Daughter, again, like the other Universal Studios films, is not a very scary film, but it does have atmosphere. However, that atmosphere is really bogged down by cheeky humor that's just borderline Abbott and Costello stuff. It's not very serious. It feels like a different movie tonally compared to the original one. But you do have Edward Van Sloan come back as Van Helsing, or should I say Von Helsing. For some reason they changed his name from Van Helsing to Von Helsing. And I didn't know this, but it's supposed to be in another century in the original one, and it takes place in the 1930s here. You can't really tell. The other one looked like it could have been in the 1930s for all I know, so it doesn't really feel too different in that regard. But you do start off with Dracula's castle. Dracula got staked by Van Helsing, and London police basically arrest him. Yeah, Scotland Yard has to investigate it, and Edward Van Sloan's Van Helsing is under charges for murder, and nobody believes him. The beginning's very bizarre. There's just a lot of really dry and just really bad humor at the beginning of this movie. But it really kind of folds into its own when Gloria Holden comes in as Dracula's Daughter. And oh my god, her and her assistant just play great parts. She has presence. And her assistant's just creepy looking. He's almost like her Igor, practically. Now, is this as good as Bride of Frankenstein? No. But it's a very unique, different, and an original sequel compared to the other ones, and a much more of a worthy sequel than, say, stuff like Son of Dracula or House of Dracula and just different stuff like that from the Universal Studios lineup. Dracula's Daughter is a very well done film, and the fact that it presents a sympathetic vampire. Way before Louis in an Interview with the Vampire, way before the stuff we have with Vampire Diaries and vampire films now, Gloria Holden plays a very conflicted character in this. She's not given enough development though, and that's really sad because she is the highlight of this film. We see her steal Dracula's body. It's a very creepy looking area where she just basically burns his body, his remains, and she's free, or at least she thinks she's free. She can't get over the bloodlust of being a vampire. She wants to have a normal life, see the light, live, but she can't escape that inner hunger of feeding as a vampire, as this monster. And ultimately the whole movie is her conflicting whether or not she wants to be that monster or is that monster. And that's very interesting and a pretty ballsy move for back in the 1930s. However, much like movies now and horror films, there was a need to add jokes in it, and that's what really bogs us down. Otto Kruger plays a psychiatrist that she wants to help her, and he's okay, but he just gets a little annoying. The characters in this, they're okay. I like the relationship between the main actor and his girlfriend. That stuff feels kind of real. It feels real. It doesn't feel too much like, oh, we're here, we're young, and we're in love. It feels like a real relationship. But that being said, there's something really missing in the characters here compared to, say, Jonathan Harker and them. and Mina Harker in the Bela Lugosi Dracula. Like, I can't quite describe it. The other characters are just so condescending to Von Helsing and just to everybody in the movie. And then as far as vampires are going, it seems unreal. Like, it is real in the fact that they don't believe in magic or vampires, but the way they act with the humor, it just doesn't jive. It doesn't feel like the world that was set up in the 31 Dracula. But that being said, it is nice seeing Gloria Holden as Dracula's daughter when she does attack. She basically gets this young girl off the street, says she's going to paint her a painting, and just hypnotizes her with a ring and attacks her. And this is the point where the body count begins to rise, and everybody points conclusions to Countess Zaleska being the monster, and she becomes the monster. She no longer cares about dealing with this bloodlust. She just wants to have the psychiatrist as a companion. She embraces the darker nature of the Draculas. And that is where the film really goes deep, and she really gets to be an evil woman and just seducing people. And there's just a certain element that's so seductive and beautiful, yet very deadly underneath. It's just that this film doesn't have enough time to explore it. She kidnaps the psychiatrist's girlfriend, and then the psychiatrist has to go to Transylvania. We're back at Dracula's castle. Everybody's freaked out, and the atmosphere and everything here is great. And ultimately, Slander, her assistant, kills her because she sees how far she's gone. She promised him eternal life, and now she wants the psychiatrist to have eternal life with her. So, with that line cross of ultimately becoming the monster and embracing that role, he kills her and she dies. And that's where it ends. It's like a happy ending. You know, there's other human characters, but you don't really feel great for them. They're just kind of like there, and then there's humor, and you don't really care about any of the characters. But Gloria Holden as Countess Zaleska in this really creates a sympathetic and tragic character for a vampire, a female vampire. Also, despite the psychological elements, you get a little bit of a lesbian subtext, or really, it's really apparent nowadays, now that looking at this film. But it's just very bold for this film to go in that direction. Now again, is it scary? No. Universal Studio films are different. They're always about the atmosphere and the mood. However, this isn't up there with the Frankensteins, not up there with Bride of Frankenstein, Mummy. It's not even up there with the Bela Lugosi Dracula. But Gloria Holden does a very different portrayal and something worthy on her own. However, the way the film's structured with the humor, the running time, the characters, it doesn't feel like it reaches the potential it could have, and because of that, it's a little bit lower on my book. But it is still a worthy movie, but it isn't very scary. It's not exactly horrifying, and it doesn't have those vampiric elements that made the Bela Lugosi film so iconic. They just do some stuff with camera movements and screaming, but you don't have that looming presence that Bela Lugosi had, that fear, the different camera elements, but it does have the atmosphere. So, what do I give Dracula's Daughter? I give Dracula's Daughter a 3 out of 5, a B, a 7 out of 10. It's a worthy sequel to Dracula, but it's not as iconic as the original. And really, it's not a very scary horror film. But it does have enough atmosphere, and the elements it has in there that do work make the final cut, in my opinion. And if you have not seen Dracula's Daughter, I would highly recommend it. It is a very underrated sequel to Dracula. But you can kind of see the direction they started to go with the later on movies in this film. It's just kind of bothersome to see the great elements in this film. If they were explored just a bit more, if we got more of the monster element from Gloria Holden with the conflicting nature of the character, I feel like you would have had a really great movie. I would not mind seeing somebody try to remake this with the content now and then just all around the storytelling we have now in film. I really think Dracula's Daughter, if it was remade, could be a really great vampire film. Anyway, that's it for my review of Dracula's Daughter in the final cut. If you haven't seen Dracula's Daughter, I would recommend you to check it out. But if you haven't, make sure to check out the Bela Lugosi Dracula first. And let me know, if you did see Dracula's Daughter, did you like it? Let me know what you think about the film. What's your favorite moment? What's your favorite Dracula film? Anyway, that is all for the final cut. If you like this, feel free to click the like button, comment, subscribe, and check out the next final cut in which I'll return to some real horror films with It Follows from 2014.